All right, guys. Last time that we were talking about the Crusades, we talked about the siege of Nicaea and how the Byzantine Empire, along with the Crusading forces, had taken over the city. And we also discussed tactics of both the Seljuk Turks and the Crusaders. We discussed how the Seljuk Turks are more of a lightly armored force that kind of wears down the enemy over time. And we talked about how the Crusaders are a heavy armored force, and they like to finish off battles with one single heavy cavalry charge. Now, the four main leaders of the First Crusade, I'm just going to go over their names again. You had Godfrey of Boulogne, he's Duke of Lorraine. You had Bohemond of Taranto from the Duchy of Apulia in southern Italy. You had Raymond of Toulouse from the Kingdom of France, and he was Count of Toulouse. And you had Robert of Flanders, Count of Flanders, also in the Kingdom of France. All right, so let's continue from where we were last time. So last time the Crusaders had taken over the city of Nicaea, and they were moving down southward. The Byzantine Emperor Alexios Comnenus I was staying in Nicaea and promised to join the Crusaders later. So the Crusaders were moving down southward, going towards Jerusalem, and they crossed over the Taurus Mountains. When they crossed over the Taurus Mountains, they were attacked by one of the lords from up here. And since he kind of attacked them from behind, they were like, all right, fine. I guess we gotta go, take over this dude's city, because we don't, then we're always going to get constantly attacked from behind from his city. So then they recross the mountains and then take over this city. And then they continue down southward. See, at this point, you have a couple lines kind of split off. Baldwin, who is a brother of Godfrey of Boulogne, he's Godfrey's brother. He's going to split off and go towards Edessa. And then Tancred, who works for Bohemond of Taranto, he's going to split off and go to Taurus. They're just trying what these guys are both doing. They're trying to go to Christian areas and recruit, basically help them out in the crusade. Right? So that's what they're doing. But let's go ahead and talk about Baldwin here. I'm gonna make a bullet and write down Baldwin of Boulogne. Let's go ahead and make a bullet and write down Baldwin of Boulogne. So Baldwin gets to Edessa in early 1098. All right, so the crusade starts in 1097. They're attacking Nicaea in June of 1097. And in early 1098, that's when Baldwin arrives in Edessa. Go ahead and make a 1. And go ahead and write down Edessa in early 1098. So make a 1 and write down Edessa in early 1098. So Baldwin arrives in Edessa with a couple hundred knights. And when he gets to Edessa, when he arrives, he's welcomed in the city. And the lord of the city wants to use Baldwin as kind of a mercenary force that kind of help out Edessa. Right? So he kind of wants to use Baldwin as a mercenary force. So Baldwin does pick up some troops, though, from Edessa, and he ends up actually fighting against another lord kind of in the area for Edessa. And when Baldwin kind of gets back to see Edessa after fighting off this other Turk lord in the area, when he gets back to Edessa, the people of Edessa are like, you know what, Baldwin, you're pretty cool. But the lord we have in here in Edessa, he's not so cool. So the people end up having a riot in Edessa against the lord of the city. The lord then tries to escape the city, doesn't go well. Lord gets killed. Then people of the city decide, you know what, Baldwin, you're going to be in charge now. So Baldwin ends up becoming the new count of Edessa, not through conquering the city, not through military force, just simply by the people of the city overthrowing the current lord of the city and then putting him in charge. And by people of the city, I mean the rich people in the city kind of didn't like the lord of the city. And they like Baldwin better, so there you go. So Baldwin's now in charge of Edessa, and that will be important later on in our story. So let's talk about what the main crusading forces were doing. The main crusading forces headed down to the city of Antioch. Go ahead and make a bullet and write down Antioch. So make a bullet and write down Antioch. And you can see here on our map, Antioch's right here along the coastline. Okay, so they're kind of going this way, and Antioch's right there. And Jerusalem, where they're going to, is further south this way. All right, so Antioch's right there. And once they get to Antioch, they arrive on October 21st of 1097. Go ahead and make a 1 and write down October 21st of 1097. So Crusaders get to Antioch in October 1097. And they're sieging the city. So they're cutting off the city of Antioch from food and water. And while they're sieging the city, while cutting off from food and water, they're just kind of waiting for the city to give up. So they're there in October. They're still there in November, and they're in December, January, February, March, April, May. In May, the Crusaders are still at Antioch. They haven't been able to get the city to surrender at all. It's still just sitting there with the defenders still inside the city, and they haven't been able to get the city to surrender. So they've spent 7 months here, and they just haven't been able to make any progress. And another big problem as well is that in the month of May, the Crusaders are starting to run low on food. So food has kind of become an issue. Go ahead and make a 2 if you would, and we're going to write down by May, Crusaders were running low on food. So make a 2 and write down by May, Crusaders were running low on food. So by the time it gets to May, the Crusaders are running low on food. They're having a hard time finding food in the area, and things just aren't going particularly well. There's people that are bailing on the Crusade. So the Crusaders had 35,000 people when they started off. 35,000 people in military force is pretty huge this time period. At this time period, if you had an army size of about 10 to 20,000, that was considered to be huge. 35,000, that's considered to be pretty enormous. So their military force they have is pretty enormous. But feeding that larger group, feeding that larger group is pretty difficult to do. So that it was becoming a problem to feed that many people. And as I said, some people started to bail on the Crusade when they started having problems getting food here at Antioch. There's another big problem as well that was happening. The problem that was also happening was that Kaboga was on his way towards Antioch as well. Kaboga is the leader of the Turks. And Kaboga, he decided to head towards Edessa. So he's like, hey, Edessa, my city, it's been taken over by this one dude, a few knights, whatever. I'll go to Edessa, I'll go retake over the city, and then I'll go swing around to Antioch. Let's go ahead and make a 4. Oh, sorry, let's make a 3, not a 4, 3. Make a 3 and write down Kaboga, leader of the Turks. So go ahead and make a 3 and write down Kaboga, leader of the Turks. So Kaboga goes to Edessa to retake over that city from Baldwin. However, when he gets to Edessa, Baldwin hadn't attacked the city and taken it over by force. He had kind of taken it over politically. As all the troops in Edessa, they worked for Baldwin now. So as soon as Kaboga shows up, the city is fully defended, plus all the troops of Baldwin. And Kaboga decides after a couple days that there's no way for him to successfully take over the city. He's just like, nope, I can't take this. So Kaboga decides that instead of trying to spend a whole bunch of time trying to take over Edessa, he then wheels around and decides to head towards Antioch. Go ahead and make a 4, if you would please, and we're going to write down headed towards Antioch. So make a 4 and write down headed towards Antioch. So instead of trying, finish off Edessa, Kaboga, the leader of the Seljuk Turks, decides, nope, I'm going to wheel around. I'm going to head towards Antioch. So write that down for number 4. Now, some of the people that were leaving the Crusade in May, because of the low food situation, they start to run into Alexis Comnenus. So Alexis Comnenus was finally making his way down towards Antioch with his military forces. And while Alexis Comnenus is heading down there, he runs into a couple people that had left the Crusade. And when he ran into them, they're like, oh, the situation in Antioch is hopeless. They don't have any food. They can't get inside the city. They're all doomed. Then Alexis Comnenus I is like, oh, well, I mean, if everyone's all doomed, I guess I'm just going to go back home. So, hearing the situation in Antioch, Alexis First Comnenus decides to head back to Byzantium. Go ahead and make a 5, if you would, and we're going to write down Alexis First decides to head back to Byzantium. And the reason why he does so is because he ran into people that bailed on the Crusade.